The battlefield was filled with smoke, fire, and broken machines. Human soldiers stood behind ruined walls, holding their weapons tightly, while alien warriors marched forward with their shining armor and glowing blades. The ground shook as heavy alien walkers moved across the land, their steps making the dust rise in clouds. For weeks the two sides had fought without rest, and now both armies were facing each other for what seemed like the final clash. Among the humans stood a young commander named Ryan. His uniform was torn. His face was covered with dirt, but his eyes still burned with determination. He looked across the ruined city square and saw the enemy lines moving closer. At the center of them was a tall figure in black armor, her head raised high, her crown made of silver and strange crystal. She was the alien queen, leader of the invading army, feared across stars for her strength and power. Rian had studied her from reports, but seeing her in person made his heart beat faster. She moved with calm grace, as if the destruction around her did not matter. Her soldiers followed her every command without question, and many worlds had fallen under her rule. The human defenses were weak, and everyone knew that if she gave the order, the battle would be lost. The queen lifted her arm, and silence fell across the field. Her soldiers stood ready, waiting for her to speak. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He knew he had only a moment before she would tell her army to finish what they had started. Around him, his own troops looked tired and hopeless. Some lowered their heads, whispering quiet prayers. Rian thought of the people he had promised to protect, the families hiding far behind the lines, and the children who had never seen peace. He thought of how many lives had already been lost and how much more blood would fall if this war continued. His heart told him that no weapon could save them now. Only something unexpected, something different could stop the battle. The queen raised her hand higher, and Rian suddenly stepped forward, out from behind the broken wall. His soldiers shouted at him to stop, but he ignored them. Dust swirled around his boots as he walked into the open field, alone with every alien warrior watching him. The alien queen turned her head toward him. Her voice when she spoke was clear and cold. "Human," she said, her words echoing across the battlefield. "Do you wish to beg for mercy before your army falls?" Rian felt his throat dry, but instead of answering her question, he shouted words that no one expected, not even himself. "Marry me?" The battlefield froze. Human soldiers blinked in shock, unsure if they had heard him correctly. Alien warriors tilted their heads, confused by the strange sound. The queen herself lowered her hand slowly, her eyes narrowing with surprise. The silence was heavy, broken only by the crackling of distant fires. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. He had not planned to say it, but the words had come out with such force that even he was startled. Yet deep inside he knew why he had said it. Marriage was not just about love or romance. To humans it meant unity, trust, and the promise of building something new together. Maybe, he thought, if she understood that, she might see another path besides endless war. The alien queen studied him for a long moment. Around her, her generals shifted uncomfortably, waiting for her to give the signal to attack. But she did not move. Her sharp gaze stayed fixed on Ryan, as if she were trying to see through his soul. "Explain," she finally said, her voice carrying both curiosity and warning. Ryan swallowed hard. "Marriage means no more fighting. It means two sides become one family. It means we share a future instead of destroying it. I am asking you to stop this war not with blood but with a promise." His words sounded strange even to him, but he spoke with courage. The queen tilted her head slightly, her silver crown shining under the pale sky. For the first time, her soldiers lowered their weapons, unsure of what was happening. On the human side, whispers spread quickly. Could this really be happening? The queen lifted her arm again, but instead of commanding her army to attack, she lowered it to her side. Her soldiers hesitated, then stepped back a few paces. A wave of confusion passed through the battlefield. Ryan realized that the impossible had happened. His strange plea had stopped the advance. She looked at him one more time, her eyes unreadable. "You are bold, human," she said. "No one has ever spoken such words to me." The sound of her voice carried across the silent field, and both armies felt the weight of her decision. For now the battle was paused. For the first time in weeks, no weapons fired, no screams filled the air, and no blood was spilled. Ryan stood tall, though his hands trembled. He had no idea what would come next, but he knew one thing for certain. His words had reached her, and the fate of both armies had changed in that single moment. The alien queen stood still, her silver crown glowing in the faint light of the burning city. Around her, thousands of alien soldiers waited for her command, but none dared to move. On the other side, human soldiers stared in disbelief at their commander, who had just shouted words no one ever imagined hearing on a battlefield. Ryan could feel the weight of every eye on him. His heart raced, but he forced himself to stand tall. He had taken a step that could mean his death, but he had no regret. At least he had done something no one else dared to try. The Queen finally raised her hand, not in attack, but as a signal for her army to hold. The ground seemed to sigh in relief as the alien machines stopped their march. A hush fell across the ruined city square, broken only by the crackle of fire and the rustle of armor. She slowly stepped forward, her cloak trailing behind her like a shadow. Every movement she made was graceful yet heavy with authority. Her eyes, sharp and unblinking, were fixed on Ryan. When she stopped just a few paces away, her presence felt like a storm pressing against him. "You speak strange words," she said, her voice calm but curious. "In all my years of conquest, no one has dared to speak to me of such a thing. Tell me, human, what is this? Marriage?" Ryan took a deep breath. His soldiers behind him shifted nervously, whispering to each other, but he did not look back. His focus was on her, and he knew this was his only chance. "In my world," he said, his voice steady though his body trembled, "marriage means a bond. It is when two people decide they will not fight each other but instead live together, share together and trust each other. It is a promise of peace, not war. When I asked you to marry me, I was asking you to join your strength with ours, not to destroy us." The Queen tilted her head slightly, as if weighing his words. Her soldiers exchanged confused glances, their alien faces unreadable. Some of them whispered in their own tongue, questioning why their queen had not ended the human's life already. "You believe," she said slowly, "that a simple bond of words can replace the power of armies? That a vow can stand stronger than weapons?" "Yes," Ryan answered without hesitation. "Because armies can destroy, but vows can build. We have fought enough. If you truly want to rule or lead, then rule with peace, not with endless war." For a moment the Queen was silent. The firelight reflected in her eyes as she studied him. Ryan felt as if she was searching his very soul, looking for weakness or lies. He held her gaze without fear. Finally the Queen turned her head slightly, speaking in her own language to her generals. They stepped closer, their armor clicking, their voices rising in protest. They argued fiercely, their words filled with anger and disbelief. From their tone and gestures, it was clear they wanted to continue the attack, to crush the humans once and for all. But the Queen lifted her hand again, and silence fell instantly. None of her generals dared to speak further. Her authority was absolute. She turned back to Ryan. "Human, you have stopped my army with words. That has never been done before. But if what you say is true, then you must prove it. Why should I, a queen of worlds, consider your strange offer?" Ryan felt the weight of her challenge. He thought quickly, searching for the right words. "Because you are not only a queen of warriors," he said. "You are a leader of people. And people need more than war. They need hope, a future, something to believe in. If you destroy us, you will only add another ruin to your empire. But if you choose to join us, you will create something greater than either of us alone." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no anger in them, only thought. She stepped even closer, so near that Ryan could see the lines of light etched in her armor and the strange symbols carved into her crown. "You are bold," she said softly, almost to herself. "Perhaps too bold, yet there is something in your words." Behind Ryan, the human soldiers were still in shock. Some whispered prayers, others simply stared, not knowing whether their commander had just saved them or doomed them. The Queen lifted her head high. Her voice, when she spoke again, rang across the battlefield. "For now, my army will wait. No attack will be made this day." A murmur spread through both armies. The aliens shifted uneasily, and the humans let out quiet sighs of relief. But no one dared to cheer, for the moment was still fragile. Ryan bowed his head slightly, not in weakness, but in respect. "Thank you," he said. The Queen studied him once more before turning back toward her forces. With a wave of her hand, she ordered them to step back. Slowly, like a tide pulling away from the shore, the alien army retreated from the city square. The sound of their heavy boots faded into the distance, leaving behind silence and disbelief. The humans watched in awe. A war that had seemed certain to end in blood had been stopped with a single question. Ryan stood still, his mind racing, knowing this was only the beginning. He had caught the Queen's attention, but now he would have to face whatever came next. And somewhere deep inside, the alien Queen herself wondered for the first time in many years if there might be another way besides conquest. The battlefield was quiet for the first time in weeks. The sound of marching feet and clashing weapons had been replaced by an uneasy silence. Human soldiers looked at each other in disbelief, not fully trusting what had just happened. The alien army had stepped back, following their Queen's command, leaving behind only broken ground and scattered smoke. No one could understand how a single sentence from their commander had turned the tide. Rian stood in the middle of the ruined square, his chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. His words had been bold, perhaps even foolish, but they had changed everything. Behind him, his soldiers whispered to each other. Some thought he was mad, others thought he was a genius. All of them knew one thing: he had done the impossible. The alien Queen remained at the edge of the field, her tall figure surrounded by her generals. She had not left, but instead ordered her forces to wait beyond the city. From where she stood, her silver crown reflected the dull light of the sky, making her seem both majestic and dangerous. She watched Ryan closely, her eyes following his every move. Later that night, when the fires had died down and the human camp settled into a restless quiet, Ryan was summoned. An alien messenger armored in shining black walked into the human lines without fear. None dared to stop him. He carried a message sealed with the Queen's crest, written in strange marks but translated by human machines. The message was clear: the Queen demands your presence. Ryan knew he could not refuse. His soldiers tried to argue, begging him not to go, warning him that it could be a trap. But he only shook his head. She could have ended us today, he said quietly. If she wanted me dead, I would already be gone. With those words, he followed the messenger into the night. The alien camp was unlike anything he had seen. Towers of strange metal rose from the ground, glowing with faint blue light. Creatures moved silently, their armor catching the reflection of the stars. The air felt heavy, filled with an energy that made his skin prickle. At the center stood a great tent made of black fabric lined with silver thread. Guards stood like statues at the entrance, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The messenger led Rian inside. The space was wide and filled with alien banners, each carrying marks of victories from other worlds. At the far end sat the Queen on a high seat, her crown shining, her cloak flowing down like a river of shadows. She did not rise when he entered, but her gaze locked on him instantly. "You came," she said, her voice calm and even. "You called," Ryan answered, keeping his voice steady though his heart pounded. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Her generals stood nearby, their faces twisted with distrust. One of them stepped forward, speaking sharply in their own language, pointing at Ryan with a look of hatred. The Queen silenced him with a single glance. Her authority was unquestioned. "Today you stopped my army with words," she said. "You offered me something no one has dared before. My people do not understand it. Many believe you are a trickster, trying to buy time for your soldiers. Tell me, human, was it a lie?" Ryan shook his head. "No, I meant what I said. I asked you to marry me not for myself alone, but for both our peoples. War cannot give us a future, but unity can." Her eyes narrowed, though not with anger. She leaned slightly forward. "You speak of unity as if it is simple. But you are fragile and my people are strong. What can humans give us that we do not already take?" Ryan took a slow breath. "You can take land, you can take resources, you can take lives. But you cannot take loyalty. You cannot take love. Those are given, not stolen. That is what humans offer. A bond not of fear, but of choice." The Queen's expression did not change, but her silence spoke of deep thought. Her generals shifted again, whispering among themselves, but she ignored them. "You are brave," she said finally. "Braver than most I have met. But bold words alone are not enough. If you wish me to consider your offer, then you must prove that humans truly value these bonds you speak of. You must show me why I should trust you." Rian nodded. "Then test me. Ask what you will, and I will not turn away." For a moment, the Queen said nothing. Then slowly she stood. Her tall figure seemed to fill the tent, her presence pressing down like a great weight. She stepped closer to him, her silver crown casting strange reflections across his face. "Very well," she said. "Tomorrow you will face the first trial. If you succeed, perhaps I will listen further. If you fail, then this war will continue and your people will fall. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine, but he met her gaze without fear. "Then I will face whatever you set before me," he said. The Queen studied him once more, then turned away, dismissing him with a gesture. Guards escorted him out of the tent, back into the cold night. As he walked back toward the human lines, Ryan's mind raced. The war had paused, but only for now. His strange proposal had opened a door, but what lay beyond it was unknown. Trials awaited him, and through them, the chance to prove that humanity was more than just fighters. And somewhere in the alien camp, the Queen stood alone, staring at the stars, wondering why the words of one human had unsettled her more than any weapon ever could. The night passed with heavy silence on both sides of the battlefield. Human soldiers stayed awake, afraid that the alien army might suddenly return. They whispered about their commander, some calling him reckless, others calling him brave. None could deny that the war had paused only because of his strange proposal. Ryan sat near a small fire, staring into the flames. His mind was restless. He thought about the Queen's words, her sharp eyes, and the strange mix of danger and curiosity in her voice. Tomorrow would bring trials, and he did not know what kind of test she would demand. Still, he had promised not to turn away. For the sake of his people, he could not fail. At dawn, another alien messenger arrived. This time the summons was not for secret talk, but for an open council. Both humans and aliens would gather in one place, a neutral ground between the two armies. Ryan agreed, knowing it was the only way forward. The council was held in the ruins of an old hall at the center of the city. Its walls were cracked, its roof half broken, but inside there was enough space for both sides to meet. Human officers sat on one side, tense and alert, while alien generals stood tall on the other, their armor glowing faintly in the light that spilled through the shattered windows. At the far end sat the alien Queen. She needed no throne to show her authority. Her very presence was enough. Her crown caught the light, and her gaze was steady as she watched both sides gather. Ryan walked forward, his footsteps echoing on the broken stone floor. He stopped at the center, facing her. "You came," she said, her voice carrying through the hall. "I gave you my word," Ryan replied. The Queen nodded slightly, then turned her eyes to the gathered humans and aliens. "Today there will be no battle," she said. "Instead, there will be questions. If the human wishes to speak of unity, let him show us what it means." One of her generals stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Queen, these humans are weak. Their words are empty. Why should we waste time on them?" Ryan felt every eye turned to him. He did not wait for the Queen to defend him. He spoke clearly, his voice steady. "If we were weak, you would have defeated us already. But here we stand, still fighting. Strength is not only measured by weapons or numbers, it is also measured by will, by the ability to keep standing even when the odds are against you." The alien general scowled, but the Queen lifted her hand, silencing him. "You speak boldly again," she said. "But words are not enough. We will learn more." She rose to her feet, her cloak flowing behind her. The sound of her movement filled the hall with tension. She looked first at Ryan, then at the humans, then at her own soldiers. "There will be trials," she declared. "Tests of strength, wisdom, and heart. The human will face them, and through them we will see if there is truth in what he says." The hall filled with murmurs. Human officers exchanged worried glances, but none dared to speak against her. The alien generals looked uneasy, but obeyed their Queen's command without question. After the meeting, the two sides remained in the hall, though in silence. No one trusted the other, but none dared to break the fragile peace. Ryan walked to the edge of the ruined building, where broken stone opened into the streets. The Queen joined him, her steps silent. "You seem calm," she said, studying him. "Not calm," Ryan answered honestly, "but ready." The Queen tilted her head, her silver crown catching the morning light. "You do not fear me as others do." "Why?" Ryan looked at her directly. "Because fear only blinds. If I let it control me, I will lose before I begin. I see you not just as a queen of war, but as someone who carries a great weight. And maybe someone who wants more than endless battles." For a moment, her expression softened, but it quickly returned to its usual calm mask. "Careful, human," she said quietly. "You speak as if you know me." "I don't," Ryan admitted. "But I want to." Her eyes lingered on him before she turned away. "Tomorrow, the first trial begins. Be ready." That night, back in the human camp, Ryan's soldiers gathered around him, asking what had been decided. He told them about the trials. Some were angry, saying it was unfair. Others were fearful, thinking it was a trap, but Rian raised his hand. "If this is the only way to stop the war, then I will face it," he said firmly. "I would rather stand alone in their test than see another city burn." His words gave them some comfort, though worry remained in their eyes. Ryan himself lay awake long after the camp grew quiet, staring at the stars. He wondered what kind of trials awaited him, and whether he had the strength to face them. But deep inside, a spark of hope grew. For the first time, the Queen had given him a chance. Far across the field, in her own camp, the alien Queen sat alone in her chamber. She touched her silver crown, her mind filled with thoughts she had never allowed before. She had seen countless enemies fall, but none had ever spoken to her as Ryan had. His words unsettled her, not with fear but with possibility. The war was not yet over, but something had changed. Both sides could feel it, like the first quiet breath before a storm. The trials would decide what path lay ahead, destruction or unity. And in the center of it all stood one human and one queen, tied together by a question that had silenced an army. Morning came with a pale light spreading across the ruined city. The air was cold, and the ground still carried the marks of battles past. Human soldiers stood in silence, watching the alien army gather at the far end of the field. Everyone knew this day would be different. It was not a day of battle, but a day of trials. Rian walked to the front, his boots crunching against broken stone. He carried no weapon, only his courage. His men wanted to walk with him, but he shook his head. "This is mine alone," he said. They watched with worry as he crossed the empty space, heading toward the Queen's side. The alien Queen was already there, standing tall with her generals behind her. Her crown gleamed in the rising sun, and her cloak swept the ground like a river of shadow. When Ryan approached, she raised her hand and the alien soldiers stepped aside to form a path for him. Their glowing eyes followed his every step. "You came," the Queen said, her voice calm though her eyes were sharp. "I keep my word," Ryan answered. She studied him for a moment before speaking. "Then your first trial begins. You speak of unity, of bonds stronger than war. Today you will face a test of strength, not strength of arms, but strength of spirit. You must stand against what we place before you, not with weapons, but with will." Her generals brought forth a massive beast unlike anything Ryan had seen. It was taller than a man, with heavy scales and eyes that glowed like fire. Its claws scraped the ground as it growled, shaking the air with its voice. Human soldiers gasped from afar, certain that their commander was walking to his death. Rian felt his heart race, but he did not move back. The Queen's voice echoed across the square. "If you fall, your people will lose this chance. If you stand, you may continue." The beast lunged forward, its roar filling the air. Ryan braced himself, his body tense. He had no weapon to fight it, and fear gripped him like cold chains. But he remembered the Queen's words. This was not a trial of arms, but of spirit. As the beast charged, Rian held his ground. Dust rose around him as the creature stopped just a breath away, its hot breath washing over his face. Its eyes glowed as it pushed against him, testing his resolve. Every instinct in him screamed to run, but he locked his legs in place, refusing to move. Minutes passed like hours. The beast snarled, pushing harder, but Rian stood unmoving. His body shook, his chest burned, yet he would not step back. Slowly, the creature's growl lessened. It tilted its head as if puzzled, then stepped back on its own. The alien generals muttered in disbelief. Human soldiers stared in silence. The Queen herself raised her hand, and the beast was led away. Her eyes rested on Rian with a new light. "You did not fight," she said. "You did not flee. You endured. That is strength." Ryan wiped the sweat from his brow but kept his eyes on her. "Strength is not only in battle," he said. "Sometimes it is in standing firm when all else tells you to fall." The Queen's gaze lingered on him before she turned to her generals. They bowed their heads, though their expressions showed unease. They had hoped he would fail, yet he had not. Later, the second part of the day brought another challenge. This time it was not a beast, but a riddle. The Queen herself spoke it aloud. "A leader carries many burdens. If he shares them, he may stumble. If he keeps them, he may break. What is the path that leads to survival?" The hall was silent as the words hung in the air. Rian closed his eyes, thinking deeply. He remembered his own soldiers, tired and wounded, and the nights he had stayed awake worrying for them. He remembered the Queen's face when she spoke of her people. Then he opened his eyes and answered, "The path is balance. A leader must share enough so his people trust him, but keep enough so they do not lose hope. Survival is not in one alone, but in all together. The Queen studied him for a long time, then gave a small nod. You understand more than I thought. Her generals looked troubled. Twice they had tested him, and twice he had endured. But the Queen did not stop. She leaned forward, her voice softer but filled with weight.
The third test will not be of beast or word.
It will be of heart. Tomorrow you will stand before both our peoples and speak, not to me but to them. If you can win their ears, perhaps you can win their future. Ryan felt the weight of her command, but he did not falter. Then tomorrow I will speak. That night, back in the human camp, his soldiers gathered around him. Some touched his shoulders, others offered food, though he barely ate. They looked at him with new respect, but also with worry.
How can you speak to them all?
One asked. They hate us. They want us gone. Ryan looked up at the stars, his eyes steady. I will not speak to their hate. I will speak to their hope. Somewhere in them it must still exist. Far across the field, the Queen sat in her chamber, her generals restless around her. Some begged her to end this foolishness, to crush the humans once and for all. But she silenced them. Alone, she thought of the human's words, his steady eyes, his refusal to bow to fear. Something inside her stirred, something she had not felt in years. The trials had begun, and though they were meant to test him, they had begun to test her as well. The night passed slowly. The human camp was filled with whispers and quiet prayers. No one could sleep easily, not even Ryan. He sat near the fire, staring at the flames as they cracked and rose into the cold sky. He thought about the Queen's final words. You will speak before both our peoples. It was not just a test. It was a chance to end years of war. But he knew if he failed, both sides would return to bloodshed. At dawn, the sound of horns echoed across the field. Both armies began to gather. Humans stood on one side, aliens on the other. Between them rose a stone platform built by both armies together in the night. It was the stage for the last trial. Soldiers from both races looked at it with sharp eyes, some filled with doubt, some with hope. Ryan walked toward it with slow steps. His men watched with heavy hearts. They knew he was carrying the weight of every human life with him. On the other side, the Queen appeared with her generals. She stood tall, her crown shining in the sunlight and her cloak flowing like water. Yet her face carried a strange calm, almost as if she was waiting for something more than victory. The Queen raised her hand and silence fell over the field. Her voice carried across the air, deep and commanding. Today the human commander will speak. He claims there is a path where war ends and unity begins. Let him prove it with his words, for words are the true measure of spirit. Ryan stepped onto the stone platform. His heart pounded, but his steps did not falter. He looked at the thousands of alien faces, glowing eyes fixed on him, and then turned to see his own people, tired, yet unbroken. For a moment he felt small, but then he remembered why he stood there. Not for pride, not for power, but for life. He began to speak, his voice steady, though the air felt heavy. I am no king, no legend, only a man who has seen too much death. For years we have fought. We have buried our children, our brothers, our sisters, and yet here we still stand, not because we are stronger, but because we refuse to vanish. Both humans and your kind have lost more than the ground beneath our feet. We have lost time, peace, and the chance to build something greater. Some aliens growled softly, but many stayed silent, listening. Ryan's eyes moved across them, not with fear, but with respect. I will not stand here and beg, he continued, and I will not pretend we are innocent. Humans have spilled blood just as you have. But I ask you this, how many more must we bury before we learn? How many more nights must we fear the dawn because it brings battle instead of hope? His words spread across the field like a quiet fire. Human soldiers lifted their heads, hearing their pain spoken aloud. Alien warriors frowned, uneasy yet unable to turn away. Ryan took a deep breath and spoke louder, his voice filled with strength. We are different, yes. Our bodies, our voices, our worlds. But our hearts are not so far apart. You fight for your people, I fight for mine. We both wish to live, to protect, to see a tomorrow where our children grow without fear. If those wishes are the same, then why must we be enemies? He paused, letting the silence settle. Even the wind seemed to still. The Queen's eyes never left him, and for the first time her face softened. Ryan placed his hand over his chest. I stand here with nothing but truth. I cannot force peace with a blade. I can only offer it with my heart. If you would trust me even for a moment, then let us build a tomorrow where both our banners rise side by side, not against each other. When he finished, the field was silent. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. The human soldiers waited, their breaths held. The alien warriors shifted uneasily, some looking to their queen, others whispering to each other. The queen finally stepped forward. Her voice was calm but strong. "You speak of hope, human, but words can be smoke carried by the wind. How do we know your heart is true?" Ryan did not hesitate. He stepped closer to her, lowering his head slightly in respect. "Because I would give my life for it. Peace means nothing if I am not willing to stand for it with everything I have." The crowd stirred. Even the alien generals exchanged uneasy looks. The queen studied him with eyes that searched deeper than the surface. For a long time she said nothing, as though measuring the weight of his soul. Then she raised her hand. At once the alien army grew silent. Her voice carried across the field, clear as the morning sun. "This man has passed the trials. He has faced fear. He has answered wisdom, and he has spoken with heart. His courage is not only for battle but for peace. I will not ignore this truth." The alien army roared in surprise, some in anger, some in awe. Human soldiers gasped, hope rising like fire in their chests. The queen's eyes lingered on Rian. "You offer peace, and I will not reject it. But peace is not mine alone to give. My people must choose it as well. You have sown a seed today, human. Whether it grows or dies depends on what comes next." She turned sharply, her cloak sweeping behind her, and with a single command, her army pulled back from the field, not as a retreat of defeat, but as a step of waiting. Rian stood on the platform, his chest rising and falling, his body trembling not from fear but from the weight of what had just passed. He had spoken, and the queen had listened. It was not yet victory, but it was the first dawn of hope. And in her eyes, for just a moment, he thought he saw something more than duty, something that felt almost like respect. The field where armies once stood together was now empty. The stone platform remained in the center, a silent reminder of the moment when war paused. Human soldiers returned to their camp with hope burning in their hearts, though uncertainty still followed them. Alien warriors returned to their stronghold, whispering about the strange human commander who dared to speak of marriage and peace in the middle of battle. Rian sat alone that night, thinking about the queen's words. She had said peace was not hers alone to give. He understood her meaning well. No matter what she believed, her people must accept it too. Without their trust, her choice could shatter her throne and start another war. The weight of it pressed heavily on him. He had spoken with all his heart, but now the future was in the hands of others. The next day, a summons arrived. The queen called for him to appear in her great hall. Human generals worried it might be a trap, but Ryan shook his head. "She has no need to trick us," he said. "If she wanted war, we would already be fighting again." With steady steps, he left the camp and followed the alien escort into the heart of her city. The great hall was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its walls glowed faintly, alive with patterns that shifted like starlight. The floor was polished stone, smooth as glass. Thousands of alien eyes watched him from the balconies above. On the throne at the end sat the queen, her crown gleaming, her expression unreadable. When Ryan entered, the hall fell silent. The queen rose slowly, her presence commanding the air itself. "You have spoken before both our armies," she said, her voice clear. "Now you must speak before my council, for they will decide if your words are worthy of trust." The council, made of tall, stern figures with cloaks of silver, stepped forward. One of them pointed a sharp finger at Rian. "Human, you claim peace, yet your kind are destroyers. Why should we believe you will not betray us once our blades are lowered?" Ryan met their gaze without fear. "Because trust cannot begin with both sides waiting for the other to fall first. Someone must take the first step. If not me, then who?" Another counselor spoke, his tone harsh. "You offered yourself to our queen. Do you even understand what such a union means? Our ways are not yours. Our lifespans, our thoughts, our duties are different. You cannot possibly carry such a burden." Ryan nodded. "You are right. I do not fully understand your ways, but I am willing to learn. What I do understand is this. The burden of war is heavier than any marriage could ever be. If my offer can lift that weight, then I will carry it." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Some scoffed, others whispered in surprise. The queen remained silent, her eyes watching every word, every movement. Finally, she raised her hand and the council fell quiet. She stepped forward until she stood only a few steps away from Ryan. Her voice softened, though it still carried power. When you spoke on the battlefield, you were bold. When you stood before my people, you were honest. Now, when faced with doubt, you are steady. I have tested your heart, and it does not waver." The hall held its breath as the queen turned to her people. "For generations we have fought humans. We called them weak, yet they endure. We called them reckless, yet they dare to hope. This man has offered me not conquest, but unity, and I, your queen, will answer." She turned back to Ryan, her eyes bright. "Human commander, I accept your proposal." The hall erupted in shock. Some shouted in anger, others gasped in disbelief, but many bowed their heads in silence, knowing the queen's word was final. Ryan felt his chest tighten. He had spoken those words first as a desperate plea, but now they had become something far greater. He bowed his head. "Then let this be the start of peace." The queen lifted her crown slightly, as though lowering her pride but not her strength. "This union is not for love alone, but for hope. Together, we will build a future where neither human nor alien need fear the other." Her generals stepped forward, some hesitant, but none dared oppose her choice. Slowly, alien warriors began to bow. Across the city, bells rang out, a sound of change. When Ryan returned to the human camp later that day, his people were waiting anxiously. As he stepped into the open, the queen at his side, silence fell. Then the human general whispered, almost in disbelief, "She chose peace." Cheers erupted. Soldiers shouted, some cried, some fell to their knees in relief. The war that had stolen years of their lives had ended not with victory of one side over the other, but with the courage of a single question. That night, fires burned across both camps, not for war, but for celebration. Humans and aliens, still cautious yet curious, sat together for the first time. They shared food, stories, and glances that carried both doubt and wonder. Rian stood at the edge of the firelight, looking at the stars above. The queen joined him, her cloak brushing the ground. "You changed everything with words no one expected," she said softly. Ryan smiled faintly. "Sometimes the simplest words are the strongest." She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing in thought. "You still do not know the weight of what you offered me." "Perhaps not," he admitted. "But I know the weight of lives saved. And that is enough." The queen looked at him for a long moment, then turned her gaze to the stars. "Then let us see what kind of tomorrow we can build." And so history recorded that the war ended not with a weapon, but with a question. A single human stood before an alien queen and asked her to marry him. And she, against all odds, ordered her army to retreat and chose a future no one had dared imagine.